Welcome to another episode of Fans in Motion. As Andy would say, the podcast that you didn't know you needed. As I would say, the ultimate Night Ranger podcast. Joining myself and my esteemed colleague, Brent Walter, is we sometimes will build up our guest, and sometimes it's true with however we build it up, sometimes it's not. But I think this might be the most prestigious we've had on this episode, and we're going to see the hardware you see behind him. That shit he has left over, right? That's I couldn't get those in my cases. That's that's my paperweight. But joining us is the Center City Film and Video Executive Vice President and Senior Director. I'm going to steal some of those titles, by the way, for this podcast. Mr. Brian Isley. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, if you don't know Brian's name right off the top in the Night Ranger world, you've definitely seen his work. He's done Night Ranger videos in the past. We've shared his photos on the social media. And the reason why he's on here today is everybody's enjoying this video. And guess who was the man behind it? Now, your first guess is probably me, and that would be a good guess. But it's actually Brian and his film company. So, Brian, thank you for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been nice seeing you on the road. And
yeah, I think we met in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good show. Everybody was there, except for Brent.
House was packed.
Yes,
and they loved it. I mean, that was a great crowd.
That's what I kind of joke about with people. It's like, at this point, I'm using Night Ranger to be able to get all access to all these old venues I want to go to.
Yeah.
So when I saw they were playing the Rhyme, I'm like, I'm definitely going to that. Obviously to see Night Ranger, but I want to go in all the places and see if I can find the ghost of Roy Acuff and all that stuff. So yeah, that was a good trip. But the feedback that this thing right here.
Yeah.
All right. When I say we, the Night Ranger fans, the community, we are all stoked with this recording and the video. The video is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Just all the different camera angles, and when you watch it the first time, you're like, you see something, and then you watch it again, you see another. And like this last time I just watched it, there was a cool angle. It's almost like someone was walking through row 3, and you see heads in front of you. And
I could tell you who the cameraman. It was John Cohengetter. Was that camera guy?
And I was like, that's a cool angle. You don't see that too often, right? Yeah. So, it's just amazing that 40 plus years into, Night Ranger's career, and Brent's been there since the beginning, and I've been there for almost 40 years. We're still getting great quality stuff like this. So I just want to thank you for putting out
I'll tell you that project was so much fun to work on. And I was stoked when they asked me to get involved. And it took a lot of work. I mean, it took a lot of preparation. I had to come up with camera plot plans to make sure we had coverage for everybody, every solo, every drum roll, every vocal. And it was a neat process to go through. And the band was so collaborative, totally collaborative. It was really a collaborative effort. I can't say collaborative so much, but it really was. And everybody from Ed, who was fantastic, to James Blades, to the band members were great in working together in making sure that we got the best stuff, because we had to light it differently than a normal concert. We had to bring up the overall fill light so that the cameras would be balanced and they wouldn't be dipping off into shadows and bright spots and being oversaturated and stuff.
Well, we're going to get all into, how you first got into the project, other projects that you've worked on with Night Ranger. But where did all this kick off for you? Where were you
Mm,
born? Where were you
yeah.
raised? How did this whole thing get going?
It's funny. I was born in I was raised in San Diego, and then later moved to this Bay Area, and actually ended up living 5 minutes away from Brad, where he lives now, currently. But when I was about 14 in San Diego, I was playing around with 8mm film cameras. And I remember my first project, and I still have it actually here, is I did a skateboard movie and I camera edited it because I didn't know how to splice 8mm film. So I would get a wide shot for 2 seconds. I would cut. I would have my friend do the same scene. I'd get a side angle, then I'd get a reverse angle, and then we play it back. And it was a little slow, but it was all cut together as you would see a normal sequence. So at age 14, I knew. I mean, I was all in. That's what I wanted to do. It was either that, play music, or play ice hockey. Those were my three things. I had no option. That was because I was not talented in anything else.
Well, it's hard to find ice in San Diego too.
Yeah.
But we had a good program there.
Really?
Yeah. A couple of NHLers came from there. Peter McNabb made the NHL, and he played with me. But long story short, so I always liked video and film and the arts. And my parents got divorced after I left San Francisco. I moved to Philly, and I went to college here in Philly at a place called Temple University, which has a real good television and film program. And my junior year, I applied for a job at the Phillies in 1980, and they went to the World Series that year.
Yeah,
I just
Mike
applied.
Schmidt.
I just bugged
Pete Rose.
Dude, he was on the team then.
Yeah.
And I bugged the shit out of him. I was persistent. I was just, and they said, listen, you're 20 years old. Our camera guys are all union or 40 years old. And I said, just can I just have a chance? Let me just show you what I can do. So it was a preseason game. I went down there, shot 2 innings at third base dugout. The next night they called me and they said, hey, if you want a job, you can shoot the season for this. So I heard it about 21, 22-year-old shooting Phillies games. And I did it for 8 years. I shot the World Series, the All-Star game. And then that kind of jump-started me into doing all the sports teams in Philly. So I worked for the Flyers, the Phillies, the Eagles, the Sixers. I started doing concerts and stuff like that.
Now, when you get hired by the Eagles, do they teach you the proper way to throw batteries?
And do you have access to the jail? We hear there's a jail there.
Eagles fans are like no other in the world. It's kind of a guilty pleasure. It's fun to be on the Eagles side. I would never wear a Bengals jersey to an Eagles game.
Yeah, just you always there's certain crowds that have a notorious following, and
it's
Buffalo.
Philadelphia Eagle fans are well deserved for that notorious following, unfortunately.
So you turn that opportunity, and that's one thing I always like with these stories is the persistence. People you talk to, it's either sometimes like luck, like it's either the Phillies make a wrong phone call and you pick up and you're not the guy we want, but just showing up, we need someone, or it's the persistence of pushing your way through the door.
Yeah, I've got an answer for that. And I always say I'm lucky. I tell people I'm lucky all the time, but fundamentally, I think that luck is because you work hard and you deserve it. You make your own luck. You work hard and you make yourself apparent.
Or you're just prepared when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like those stories where, you're not waiting for the door to open. You're there knocking, basically
kicking it in,
saying, hey, I'm here.
Guys, I've had such a freaking great career. I don't consider my work. I don't, it's not work. It's fun. I so enjoy the process, the creative process, the problem solution process. Give me a problem and I'll figure out a solution on how to do it. And then working with my great crew, who are all dear friends of mine. I mean, we're an extended family. We've got 93 employees at the company. And everybody is top notch.
Yeah.
And then having the opportunity to work with people like Night Ranger and and becoming part of their family.
Now hold on, I want to get back to these Philly sports teams. So did you get a film? Was it Dr. J?
Dr. J. I have a picture downstairs of him that he signed for me that I took of him. So that's the exact era. You guys are right on with Pete Rose and Dr. J.
Well, Pete was my idol growing up.
Yeah.
Well,
all my Reds jerseys are 14 rows on the back. And every time I'd wear one to the game, people would say, "Hey, you want to make a bet on who's going to win?" I'm like I haven't heard that 100 million times,
Yeah. So
Charlie Hustle.
You even got into like some of the bad Philly years. Like,
well,
you saw Ryan Sandberg probably for a minute.
Yeah.
Von
Hayes.
Von Hayes,
that's
probably one of the coolest names with the lowest batting average. Andy Van Slyke was another cool name, but
you get Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt's a resident from here. He's actually more from Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
And you had some former Reds. Gary Redus, I think, went to the Phillies for a while, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So out of these teams, right, for the Flyers, in the 76ers, is there a player that just sticks out of your head for like that is just unique in some strange, cool way? Or is there someone that
Lester Hayes, Stickum?
I don't know who that is. Is that a player?
He was a Philadelphia Eagle, but it was more 70s.
Okay.
And
was he a Stickum guy?
Yeah, he was a Stickum guy. And I remember being a kid and they're interviewing him and he couldn't get the microphone off his hand.
But is there's someone out there, you always love filming or just?
Yeah, that's it. I'll tell you what, one of the great stories I had for the Flyers for me personally was I played ice hockey growing up. So I was able to, after practices, go out with the team that if people were sticking around and just doing 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s and whatever. And I remember doing drills with Brian Propp and Timmy Kerr on the ice. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I'm practicing with the fucking Flyers. Pinnacle. I mean, just such a great memory. And once again, good people. I mean, good people that would help, some long-haired 22-year-olds skating with them without a helmet, and they're doing 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s. So that was a great memory. One of the most prominent memories from the Flyers was Eric Lindros.
Now that would be like early 90s, right?
Yep. I think late 80s.
Really? All right. But I remember when I was going to ask you about him, but I thought it was a little bit later, but because not even being a hockey fan, being a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid, whenever that would have been, like, I remember that name coming down, coming down the pike, supposed to be this big rated rookie. And so
such high potential. I mean, he was a born Flyer the way he played and his skill sets, and he was a hell of a fighter. And it's just a shame how it just kind of fell apart on him. It really is, because he could have been, in my opinion, the best hockey player ever, but it just didn't work out that way.
Were you there with them? Did they go to the Stanley Cup in like 97, 96, the Flyers?
I was not. Yeah, I wasn't with them then. I have to go downstairs. I have a music studio in my basement that has all my press credentials on the wall.
All right.
And it's pretty cool seeing all my like working cards for being a Flyers, crew member and all that kind of stuff. But that was basically the 80s for me.
That's really cool.
So you get your start. Now, when you basically, were you employed by them as like an individual, or did you create like a company for them to hire?
Right. No, I was a freelancer. So in those years when I was working for all the sports teams, I became part of a circle of crew members that freelance the games. we'd switch each other out. If I had a conflict that I had to do something, we do what we call the favor tally. And the favor tally is, I call you, Josh, and say, listen, I can't shoot the game Thursday night. Can you fill in for me? So I just got you a job. And even though you were on the rotation, but you got to fill in for me. So then, Josh, the favor tally works is that I'm up next. So the next game that you can't work, or the next event, you give me the call. And that's how it works. So there was maybe 30 crew guys in Philly that would just rotate through and play nice with each other. And some of the guys are still doing it today. I was just at the championship game in Philly, at the new stadium at Citizens Bank Park, and some of the guys are still there shooting.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So when did you first start venturing outside of the sports world?
I started shooting news, probably mid 80s, 90s, late 80s for a Fox television affiliate news station here in Philly. And I always wanted to be like a news photographer and go out and shoot the news stories and stuff. And quickly I found out that's not what I wanted to do. It was nothing but bad shit,
Yeah.
It really was. It was dead bodies. It was fucking car accidents. It was holdups. It was just, I really hate surrounding myself with that kind of negative energy. And within a half a year, I said, I don't want to spend my life doing this. And then I started getting into commercial production, and I went to a smaller, much smaller production company that I'm working at now, that I'm a principal in now, and quickly became a vice president there. And we ended up shooting Campbell Soup commercials and some pretty high-end stuff for being a real small 10-person shop, and I was in my late 20s there. And then by the time I was like 32, I took a job with Center City Film and Video.
So tell us some of the tricks that you use in commercials. Like, I know, like
ice cream and his mashed potatoes and stuff like that.
That, or like in soup, they'll put something like
marbles.
So the stuff will lay right on top and not sink. Come on, tell us some of those secrets, man.
There's a lot. The marble trick is true. For a while, there was a real big thing of ethics within the industry of not doing everything and shooting everything organically, and that all went to shit about 15 years ago, and everybody started cheating. So we would shoot pizzas, and we would get a flamethrower, and get them all crusty and stuff and bubbly, and then literally roll right after that. So you only have like 15 seconds to get that real good cheese pull or that real good bubbly shot. And you always want to do like a dolly move or something sexy with it, or shoot it, or what we call over crank it, which is like 60 frames per second instead of 30 frames per second or 24. And by over cranking it, you're giving it that nice, sexy, kind of smooth, just kind of slow motion thing.
I need to order a pizza right now.
So we did food commercials, and I would build this huge studio out and have like 3 kitchens going continuously, baking and making product, and then bringing it onto set. We would get the film shot first, and then they take it to a photography set right next to ours, and then they would do still photography of it, and then we bring the next one out. And what we'd always do is we'd put a dummy in the shot first, so it's just like a shitty looking dish or whatever it's going to be, a hamburger and fries. And then you get your lighting right, your rake light, your key light, everything. You get your camera move right, and then as soon as we're ready, we'll go to the kitchen and say, okay, it's time to bring the hero in. And they'll have the hero ready to go, the all dolled up shot with everything, gleaming and everything, and they'll bring it in, and within a minute, it'll look like a turd. The lighting just kills it. So you gotta be really ready, and then get another hero in and do that.
Yeah. So what I've learned is, what they say in like acting, you don't work with, animals and children, and in commercials, don't work with food.
Well, no, you work with food because that way you get to eat it.
I've never eaten anything I shot.
Oh, well.
Well, you can take a look at me and Brent. We would
we'd probably eat it. It was funny that you're talking about how they do that. My wife and I were watching TV. Rarely we watch TV together because polar opposites. And a Blue Buffalo commercial comes on, and these two ladies are in the grocery store holding this. It looks like it's got a pillow in the bag, perfect bag. If you've ever held dog food, you know it bends over when you pick it up.
Yeah.
And they're just passing it. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
My wife's like, I know I couldn't even lift that bag.
Yeah. It's probably full of cotton.
Yeah. You know.
So
and I've never had a Big Mac look like how they look.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of trickery, but it's fun. It's part of the process.
So you're doing food commercials. Now, you're doing that before you joined
Center City?
The Center City?
No, I was doing that. I did a lot of food stuff at Center City Film and Video. We really excelled at that. And then I started getting more into programming, TV commercials. I've worked with a lot of celebrities. And probably the most prolific one, that's probably the most high name, would be Clooney. And he did a voiceover for a documentary I did on Bono. And so
what would be your job like there? So so you're doing this documentary on Bono. What is like your job title? What what are you doing with George Clooney? Are you directing to narrate?
Well, it's a great story, actually. Is we were somehow their team reached out to us about doing a documentary, a mini doc on him and his humanitarian efforts in Africa. And I was all in. I was a huge YouTube fan. I was a huge music fan, period. Obviously, still am. And so I jumped on it and I said, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about it. We went and met with the people, and they saw the passion and excitement and the knowledge of the band and of Bono and what he has achieved in his career of helping people out. And, he gets a bad rap. Some people make fun of him, like he's trying to save the world and stuff. There's nobody in the music business that does more for humanitarian causes than him. There's absolutely nobody. He is legitimately an incredible person when it comes to that. And he speaks like 8 languages. I'm exaggerating, maybe 5, whatever. The guy is so articulate and so well versed in so many things. And he really, the political spectrum, people say he's left or whatever. He's not. He's right in the middle. He plays well in the sandbox with everybody. All he wants is just to have people treated fairly. And long story short, so we got awarded the job because we really showed a lot of passion and interest in the project. And I told the client, I said, I'd love to get a really well-known voiceover to do the project. And my immediate thoughts was Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Will Smith. They were all hot at the time. I thought they all had very distinguishable voices that would be really resonated with the documentary. And so I found out through mutual friends and people in the business, the managers of all 3 of these gentlemen. And I sent out really well-written, emails to each of them. Nothing back from Brad Pitt, nothing back from Will Smith, nothing. Sent one out to George Clooney. Literally within 15 minutes, I'm driving home from Philly to my house. And I remember it vividly. I pulled over at the Kohl's shopping market on Ridge Avenue. And I remember his manager just called and said, we'd love to do it. Let us know as long as you can come to New York and work with us in New York, because he's shooting a movie, we'd be happy to do it. And 2 weeks later, I scheduled record time. He came in, torn blue jeans, Timberland boots, flannel shirt, came in and gave us an hour of his time. And it was amazing.
He's a Cincinnati boy. That's why.
Is he really?
Yeah. His dad was the news anchor down here for 20, 30 years.
How about that?
Nick Clooney. And which, of course, his aunt is Rosemary Clooney, the old singer. So, yeah, they're all from this area.
That's great.
Yeah.
Does he come back to Cincinnati often?
I haven't seen or heard anything about him in years coming back to town.
Yeah.
I know he came back because I think they honored his dad about 10 years ago, and he came back for that.
Yeah. Bradley Cooper's from Philly, and he comes back quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this documentary, what was it called?
It was The Sounds of Freedom, I think, and it was because he was getting the Liberty Medal at the Constitution Center, and so they needed a 5-minute mini documentary to roll, and ABC picked it up.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And I never expected it to win an Emmy. I didn't even go because I thought this isn't going to win. I mean, it's good, but
Now, was that the first Emmy you were nominated for?
That was the first Emmy I ever won.
Wow.
I've won 3 since, and my account executive went, and he called me and said, "We fucking won," and I was like, "No way!"
Did he have to go on stage and say,
"No,
Brian couldn't be here tonight"?
Yeah. Yeah, no. It was one of those preliminary things, but regardless, it was a great honor. And the best part of the story actually is last year, 14 years later, Bono's PR company calls me and said, "Hey, remember working with you 14 years ago? Would you do another project like that for us?" And I was like, "Yeah."
No.
Yeah. So, the real nice thing was it was literally 14 years separated, and they still had my name, number, and still had the foresight and the ability to reach out to somebody that they worked with before because they've got all kinds of people they could have hired for that.
And you've been a Bono, you've been a U2 fan since you were a kid?
Ever since I saw the Red Rocks concert.
Well, that's legendary. I mean,
really
that brought Red Rocks in all of our living rooms. That I used to wonder what the heck is this place. But
now what really happened was they didn't remember you, but Bono's been watching this.
That's right.
Okay, and he was like, "Get me this guy.
Yeah.
Get me this guy. He makes Brad Gillis look good. That's the guy I want." So how does your Emmy show up?
What do you mean?
Does it come in the mail? Do you go pick it up?
Oh, this one my account executive brought to me. The other ones I went to.
Smart man.
All right. So, but where do they go to pick? They go to.
Yeah, you actually walk home. You walk home with it that night.
All right.
So it's funny. I took a picture actually of a whole table of these set up backstage. I mean, there was it seemed like 100 of them, it's a very well run organization, and I never expected to win an Emmy Award in my entire life. I never thought that was a possibility.
And what were they all for?
Oh God, there's a lot of one that was really important to me was for actually a public service program for something called the Police Athletic League, and it won the best PSA Emmy. And it I don't know if you have a Police Athletic League in Cincinnati. They're pretty much in every city. And what they are is it's an organization run by the police department of every city, and they set up rec centers at the police department's cost for at-risk youth. And these are kids that are living in urban blight, that are in danger every day of drugs, weapons, all kinds of shit. And it's a safe haven for them. And so I became a board member 15 years ago for the organization, and they needed a national PSA to really hit home, and they asked me to do it, and I did it, and it won. It was really well produced. It was
fantastic.
And it was it was a worthy project. It was a project that actually meant something.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
When you doing that documentary on Bono, did that? I mean, obviously, it opens doors where you can do stuff like those PSAs. Did it open, different doors or different, avenues in the entertainment business? Did it take you to like another, tier?
Well, it certainly adds cred. It gives you credibility. It's good when people come into our studio. I mean, we've got a state of the. Brad's been in our studio. We got a beautiful studio in Center City, Philadelphia. It's 19th top floor of a high rise right next to City Hall. Really contemporary. You come through and all you see is just a wall of high-end awards. So it adds credibility to who you're working with and what we stand for and our work ethic. And then that just kind of trickles and it just steamrolls. So I've worked with, Marie Osmond at 20 times. I've been to Vegas working with Marie. I've worked with a ton of people. I've worked with Jessica Simpson. I've worked with Randy Jackson, worked with, oh God, there's so many people I can't even mention, but I've worked with a lot of celebrities and I've really enjoyed it. And I think the key to working with a celebrity is just treat them like normal people. Don't be a fanboy. Don't ask to get a picture taken with them. Don't fucking say, oh, how much I like your work. Tell them, here's what we're doing. This is the kind of, delivery we need.
Now, next time Brent sees Jack, he's going to slap his phone out of his hands, tell Jack no photos, and then he's just going to like punch him in the gut or something.
I've dreamt about it. Yeah.
So this office, I mean, you talk about it being in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You always, I think, when you think of like this stuff, you always think of LA.
Yeah.
Right?
I lived pretty much bi-coastal for a couple of years. Constantly going out to LA and Santa Monica. My cruise shoot, we just did a shoot in Barcelona, Singapore. We shoot everywhere. So we're based in Philly, but most of I would say half of our projects are out of state, quite frankly, because our clients want to send us to places and don't mind paying the extra, airfare
and
stuff.
then with those executive vice president and senior director titles, you probably get first pick. So if you're looking at this, the day sheet and it's like, all right, we got a upcoming shoot in Omaha and we got an upcoming shoot in Barcelona, you're pretty much probably picking Barcelona. But when did you first I know you talked about, being in the Bay Area, living not too far from Brad. Did you know any of the guys in Night Ranger before you started working with them?
I knew Brad first. I met Brad, probably 8 years ago. And it just happenstance. And we ended up using some of his music for a project I was producing. He does needle drop and he does background music for scores. And he's very, very successful at that part of that genre. He's worked with ABC, with Wild World of Sports,
ESPN a lot.
ESPN, yeah. So he cranked out some stuff for us, and we used it. And within a couple of weeks, they were playing in Atlantic City, and he brought me backstage to Atlantic City, treated me like freaking family. And ever since then, we became really good friends. And I mean, he's a great friend of mine. I really respect him and appreciate him, and very grateful for the opportunities that I've had and being able to work with him.
Yeah, his only flaw was he's a Raiders fan.
Yeah, he's a huge Raiders fan. Yeah, he's gonna. We were talking about seeing a game in December in Vegas when I'm out to see you too. That he's going to be, I think, going to a Raiders game that same week. So
well, nothing like seeing getting your misery live and in person.
I used to, when I was raised in San Diego, and the Raiders were a big rival. So the days of Kenny Stabler,
you were there for Dan Fouts and Joyner and Winslow and
my God, what's the quarterback? Jim
Fouts.
I was thinking Dan Fouts.
Dan Fouts, yeah.
I mean, he was there for Stan Humphries too, but you probably weren't in San Diego, then. But and we also the Bengals got James Brooks from you.
Yeah.
So when
who was the one that wore the glasses and always had like the tape in the middle? Is that Joyner?
Seth Joyner?
Was it? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Running back.
Oh, damn. I'll think of this.
Chuck Muncie. Was it Chuck Muncie?
Yeah. That's one of those things that I think of at 3 a.m. this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, join us for all your Night
This
Rangers
is
San Diego.
this is what we
Chargers
do to you,
talk.
you know.
Yeah. You guys know your sports really well, I got to say.
Well, you also, I mean, you had, well, you had been in Philadelphia then, but you just missed San Diego's first World Series in '84.
Here, I got something for you.
Is it Gary Templeton autograph?
This is the first year I worked for the Phillies. I think it is 83. Actually, this is they won the National League here. Got the whole ball signed by the team because I was at third base, so I would just go ahead and give the guys the ball and they'd sign it. They went to the World Series this year, I believe, and lost to the Orioles. So that was my first year of shooting third base dugout.
Wow.
I mean, talk about luck. That's luck.
It was Pete nice to you at all? Pete?
Yeah, I didn't really. I was a camera guy. That was just,
because as beloved as he is here in Cincinnati, when he left to the Phillies, I was in 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember. And he came back to an American Legion Hall and played a celebrity softball game, and we were all sitting in a team room watching the World Series with him. But he wouldn't speak to anybody. And his brother Dave, sweetest guy you'd ever meet.
Yeah.
And he walked over and he said, You need Pete's autograph? And I had a Philadelphia, his first Phillies card. I was like, yeah, I'd love to get this signed. And Pete walks in, or Dave takes me over and goes, Pete, this is Brent, And Pete looks at the card and he goes, I'm sick as tired of signing these fucking things. And my heart just went boom. And Dave's like, he's just pissed because he's not in the World Series. Wow. So just curious.
Yeah.
I used to work for minor league baseball back in the late 90s, and a guy that owned the company name was Stu Payne, and he did some work for the Phillies in the early 80s, and he always said that Mike Schmidt was great. Or no, I think it was reversed. Pete Rose was great. Mike Schmidt was the asshole.
Yeah.
Really?
Here's your Pete Rose autograph for you.
Yep.
There you go.
It never changed. It's iconic. Iconic.
Now, were you there when Jeff Rimmer was the play-by-play guy?
Name sounds familiar. I don't remember.
Yeah. But
you could see Tug McGraw smacking that mitt.
It must be something with like Philadelphia, because Norm Macdonald told a great story about going to a Flyers game. He's a teenager, maybe like 12, 11, somewhere in there. And after the game, he went out to get like an autograph. And one of the Flyers players was smoking a cigarette outside. And he walks up, and he said the player's name, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, will you sign my card or whatever? And he said the guy just looked at him, took a big drag off his cigarette, and just flicked his cigarette at him and went back inside.
Oh my Lord.
Really?
Yeah, Philadelphia. He goes, that was better than an autograph.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is not symbolic of the Flyers and the hockey players in general. Hockey players, since I've worked with all 4 sports leagues, and the hockey players are really the most cool and laid back, and that was a pretty unique experience, unfortunately.
Well, this from what I understand, this would probably been like mid 70s. And he was one of the like tough guys kind of deal.
Right. Like Dave Schultz or Bob
I'll have to look it up, but like I remember them talking about like he was like, the fighter on the team, and
that would be Schultz. I had actually I worked with Schultz years later, and I brought a pair of Everlast boxing gloves, and I asked him if he would sign him, and he signed them.
Was Philadelphia? I mean, I know. I mean, you guys, had some big, super, George or Joe Frazier's from Philadelphia.
I went to high school with his daughter.
Rocky Balboa, is from
Rocky
is from there. But who was the guy who fought Ali, and he was like a fucking beer distributor or something? Was he from Philadelphia? You know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I got a good Mike Tyson story for you.
Yeah, go ahead. We want to hear it right now.
So during this earlier part of my career, I was shooting sports all the time. So I was doing the Phillies, Flyers, blah, blah, blah. And I was working for ESPN. And so it was the Tyson Spinks fight I got hired to go down and shoot. in
Was that at
Atlantic
the
City.
Spectrum?
That was in Atlantic City. It was at
Okay.
the Taj Mahal, I believe. And this is when Tyson was, he was just destroying everybody in 94 seconds, and he was wearing the black trunks, and Kevin Rooney was his trainer back then. And I had those credentials in my studio as well. So long story short, day before the fight was their last sparring session, and they rented out a huge convention room at the Taj Mahal and it had a full-size ring in it, and it had like 3 rows of seats around it. And all the crew, my crew guys were in there just peeking in, and they were all walking out, and I was walking in, and they said, they're kicking everybody out. The Tyson's doing his last, sparring session. And I was like, I'm just going to play fucking dumb and go in. So I played dumb, and I went down, and I sat down right in the center of the front row, and I see Tyson sparring with Rooney, getting into the ring, and he gets in the ring, and the whole fucking ring is just boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's just resonating. I've never seen anything like it. And I'm thinking to myself, if he hit me, I would die. I mean, I would literally die if he hit me. And he's sparring around, and he's got his big entourage around him, and I'm the only guy there that's not with his entourage. And he's sparring around, and he looks at me within 2 minutes, said, "Who the fuck are you?" And he goes, "You're a fucking spy. You're with Spinks. I've seen you, you motherfucker." And he starts walking to me, and all these guys start walking to me. And I'm like, I stood up and I showed him my ESPN pass. And I said, "No, I'm a cameraman for ESPN. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm rooting for you." And I start to get up to leave, and he starts cracking. I go, "I'm just fucking with you." And at that point, I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I continue to get up and leave, or do I sit back down in the pants I just shit myself in?
You should have said, "Oh, I was here to kick your ass." That's what you should.
So literally, I just kind of like sat back down for like 30 seconds, and they went about their business, and I just kind of snuck out. But I've never been threatened and that scared in my entire life.
Now,
Wow.
if you ever have a heart attack down the road, some of it's going to be, to blame for that one experience where your heart fucking pounded, yeah, you're probably the only one of the few people of, who's not been in the ring, who's probably felt that Mike Tyson wrath.
He's got PSD from it,
he was just unbelievable. And actually, years later, I'm in Santa Monica doing a shoot, and I have a friend who lives in Santa Monica who's friends with Mike, and we spin around. We're going to the Stevie Wonder show for the Grammys at the Staples Center, and sure enough, Ceno's driving his car, and we're going to see Stevie Wonder at the Grammys, and who fucking calls him on the phone? It's Mike Tyson.
Asking if that fucking spy's with him.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to do the voice. But people who weren't there, like, I was young enough to experience, it. That Mike Tyson era was just something. And I just remember waking up one morning. I was going to church. That's just weird in itself. And my stepdad telling me that Tyson lost. And it was just like, what? Like, how he doesn't lose? Like, who the hell, beat him? And, it's like, then it was Buster Douglas. Like, it was such a shitty fight. Like, they had to go to Japan to sell it because, they were like aiming for a couple fights down the road, as the big ones. And,
it was an amazing downfall, and because he was unbeatable. There was nobody that could touch him. And then, Don King was involved and all that, those shenanigans, and
Robin Givens and that.
And boxing was like, at that time, in my humble opinion, that was the ultimate boxing era right there. I don't think boxing's ever achieved that again.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really there in the 70s, but in the 70s, 60s, I mean, you had those big heavyweights.
Oh, I remember all the Ali fight. Monday night on ABC, they would show them, you know.
But when you got into the 90s, I mean, or the 80s, I mean, you had the heavyweights, but then you had the Roberto Durans and you had Sugar Ray Leonards. And I mean, I could, who's the fuck there, I'm sure we can name tons more, but you had so many different fighters and so many,
Boom Boom
classes.
Mancini.
And
yeah.
And then, like I said, Tyson was just something else. You'd never seen anything like it. He was like a machine.
Yeah.
Even something about, I mean, boxers were always kind of flamboyant a little bit, to where he came out black trunks, black shoes. Even that stood out, and he was just unbeatable. I mean, didn't matter who it was. It could be a nobody. It could be Leon Spinks. And if it went 2 rounds, you were just like, I had an off night.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But
I remember Andy would get people together and they'd want to chip in and do the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And my cheap ass wouldn't do it. I was only making $3 an hour in the 80s. And they're like, why don't you want to? I'm like, it's going to be over within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'd walk in the door and everybody sitting around. I'm like, what? They go, it's over. I'm like, I told you.
Yeah.
You're wasting your money.
Yeah.
It
was a huge pay-per-view payout. I mean, the dollars were just enormous.
Because you'd only get those still shots on the news is all you would see. They weren't allowed to show video.
Exactly.
I mean, and you had Showtime, had boxing,
HBO
all the time. Back then, you didn't have major league sports on ESPN, so a lot of boxing.
Yeah.
You knew it was, I forget whose joke this was, but you knew it was really late at night when ESPN would show 2 white guys boxing. It's like, all right, it's 3 a.m. I need to go to bed. But
it's like an infomercial. I do those, and don't make fun of this because it's been made fun of on Saturday Night Live. But I do those CD commercials, those infomercials for Time Life.
I love those things, man.
And yeah, I've done about 25 of them. And
like, there's. Go ahead.
Guy from REO Speedwagon.
I've done everybody. I've done them all, and they're really fun to work on. I get to work with great people, and the client, quite personally, is one of my favorite people in the world. His name's Alan Rubens, and he's just a dear sweetheart, who's got a great musical pedigree behind him. But
it wasn't the guys from America. Did you one of the guys from America?
Yeah.
Remember that one? Did you do the one like the Grand Ole Opry Color Classics? That was a good one. I don't care if you did.
The only one I did in Nashville was with Jimmy Fortune.
Statler Brothers.
Yes.
Hey, I know my country.
And he was awesome. He was just such a nice guy. We exchanged numbers, and matter of fact, when I was in Nashville with you, when Night Ranger was there, I pinged him. We were going to try to get together for a drink.
Now he's not an original Statler.
No,
he joined in like 1982, but
his wife's an all rocker. She loves the Foo Fighters. She's big Foo Fighters. Yeah, she's a big Foo Fighter fan.
No, that's the thing about Nashville. It always pisses me off now because there's, I want to hear, my 60s and 70s country, Johnny Paycheck, Gary Stewart, and I walk in and it's like Kid Rock, and it's just,
When we were there for the Night Ranger show, Brad and I hung out for a couple of days prior to that. We went guitar shopping. We went to Carter's Vintage Guitars and Grunes, and did Michael Stertow joined us from the Guess Who, and it was a lot of fun. It was just we had a blast looking at guitars, and Brad goes in there and he's playing $40,000 Gibson guitars and just shredding on them.
Giving a clinic.
Yeah, he's giving a clinic. I mean, he just destroys them. And but I took him to a show at a place called the Listening Room one night. And it's where all the producers and singer-songwriters go, and they line up in 4 bar stools and they perform the songs that they wrote for Kelly Clarkson, for Shania Twain, or they wrote for, whoever. And they tell the story about how they wrote the song and how the artist then bought the song from them and performed it. And so Brad was reluctant to go, quite honestly. He was like, I don't know if I really want to go to that. And he was mesmerized by it. I'm sorry. And he came up after the show and he said, I want to go talk to those guys, because there was 4 of the singer-songwriters up there, and every one of them knew who Brad was. And they were all like, dude, Brad Gillis, dude, you're a shredder, you know? It was a lot of fun though. He enjoyed it.
Well,
That's cool.
so you going to do a project with Jimmy?
No, I don't. I don't know. I mean,
Mm.
I don't know.
All
I'm
right.
just friends with them at this point, you know.
Well, I would have never thought that you'd be friends with the Statler brothers.
Yeah.
Brent, you got any Statler brothers records back here?
I do not.
Missing out, man. Most people know Statler brothers by Flowers on the Wall, Pulp Fiction.
Well, when I was a kid, they were just like Kenny Rogers. You'd always see a commercial, not an infomercial, but like a 30-second commercial for their greatest hits. I mean,
Dude,
you got to remember this.
They rolled
Kenny Rogers
TNN in
ones.
the 80s, man. 9 o'clock Statler Brothers show every night, man.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
did you
Yeah.
first get the phone call from the Night Ranger organization saying, you know, we'd like to do something with you? When would that have been?
First time ever was Brad and I had already been friends, and they were on tour for 2 albums ago, and they were going to release Truth as their single.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me 24 hours notice. They said, we're going to be in Philly. Can you shoot a quick video for us for this single? So I gathered up my guys. We went to this real small venue, made it look as big as possible. The place was sold out, and shot that video. Then maybe 2 years later, they were coming out with their latest album, and they wanted me to shoot Breakout in the desert, which was a blast, man. It was so much fun.
Now, you did both videos?
We did both in one day.
Yeah, so Breakout and Bring It All Home.
Yep, we shot them both in the same day in Bombay Beach. This desolate kind of like
very cool background.
Totally cool background. It stunk like hell, but you know, it was a blast. Once again, the band was so great to work with. They were just like, okay, tell us what to do. Yeah, that's great. Okay, I got this idea. Carrie wanted to go up on top of a dilapidated building to do a solo. I said, great, let's get up there and do it. You know, we had a drone going around, but it was a huge win because I shot the bulk of that footage. I shot 90% of that, both of those videos, and directed at the same time. And then I had another cameraman with me who shot, and we had a drone guy who added some color to some shots that we used, but it was a minimal crew. It was like nothing. And in the middle of the desert, hot as hell, and the videos turned out great. I mean, they really turned out good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was my first real venture into working very closely with Jack and Kelly and Carrie and Eric and Brad and Ed and James and everybody. And it was a great feeling. I can't thank them enough for giving me that opportunity, but it was just a real, once again, as I mentioned earlier tonight, the collaborative effort and a huge win. I remember driving home, and the sunset was coming down, and we're driving back to LAX, long day. And I looked to my partner, John, who was actually on the crew for the Cleveland show. And I was like, that was fucking great. You know?
And it's a great video. I mean, that was, the first studio album that came out while we were doing this podcast. And that was the one thing that, I picked up was not only is the song great, but the video looks cool because there's
and energetic at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, you get this thing where bands from that genre that we like, they'll release something and, if the video's cool, the song's not that great. If the song is great, the video looks like something me and Brent shot, on
an iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah. Not even on iPhone. I think I'd be giving them too much credit. So, when that came out, I was like, all right, the song's good and the video's good. It's crisp, it's clear. It doesn't look cheesy,
Yeah.
stuff like,
Yeah.
just it's something you would show your friends,
Yeah,
right? And that's not.
it was edgy, and there was
Mhm.
a lot of implied movement in the camera. We didn't want to do the locked off medium close up,
Mhm.
shit. We wanted to be moving around, so you felt
Yeah.
like the energy of being there.
Yep.
And then for breakout, we colorized it to make it look different. We kind of gave it a warmer sepia
Mhm.
wash almost to
Yeah,
it.
I can see. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's the video I'm really referencing is the
yeah,
breakout video. I don't think I watched the other one all that much. Just
yeah,
I was really into breakout, and so that's the one I'm referencing. But yeah, you got the camera angles where they're like the camera's almost on the ground, kind of
yep,
looking up, and they're
yep.
singing kind of so like I said, this day and age, not all the time when your favorite band releases something, do you want to take it to your friends and go, hey, look, because they'll look at you if they're not fans of that type of music. Go, what the fuck are you watching?
Yeah.
But that was a very, very well shot video, and
Yeah.
so
So that led me to, I think the next year after that, they went to Europe, and Brad called me up and said, hey, bro, you want to go? You want to come with us and just hang for 2 weeks? And I'm like, yeah.
No working involved, just hang.
No work, just hang. And I
that
ended
was.
up shooting a lot of stuff just because I like shooting. And I think, Josh, you probably got that stuff as well.
I know we shared a lot. I know
Yeah.
you're active on Instagram a
Yeah.
lot, so I know I was just
Yeah.
putting a lot of stuff in Instagram
Yeah.
stories straight from your page.
Yeah. But that trip was epic. I mean, it was epic. Once again, I am so blessed and so grateful that they, brought me into their squad to try. I felt comfortable traveling with me for 2
Mhm.
weeks. You can pick the wrong person to travel for 2 weeks with, and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
So when did you first start hearing about this?
That's a good question. I do not recall. That probably either Brad or James reached out to me about that, and was really intrigued by it. And I looked at what the Cleveland Youth Orchestra had done with other bands, and even though the people within that organization have changed since then, they worked with Styx and a couple other people. Um, it was like a labor of love. There was so much pre-production involved in that job. From plot plans, camera plot plans, to figuring out how we're going to do the lighting, how we're going to do the loading, how we're going to do rehearsals, what's it going to sound like. I flew into Cleveland a day early, looked at the venue, did a site survey with Ed. I worked very closely with Ed throughout this, who was awesome. And they um, went out to dinner with the band every night and talked shop, but also had a lot of fun. They're just great to hang with. They're just great people. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, I've worked with a lot of musicians and a lot of celebrities. And I have to say that the people in Night Range are the most down to earth, fun people, good people that I've worked with. I can honestly say that. So we had a blast doing that kind of stuff. And then we went to a first rehearsal, which became part of the video. You saw a little bit of the buildup.
Mhm.
We didn't want to start the DVD with just the concert because it would be kind of out of context. So we needed this little like 2-minute segment up front just to give the whole thing context as to why they're performing with the youth orchestra, and the rehearsals were crazy because everybody had their sheet music, and the band was awesome. They were right on it. They were like, I hear this, I hear that, I hear this, I hear that. And then we all packed up, went to dinner, went home. And then the day of the show, we had our final rehearsal with the band, with the orchestra. And I'll be first to say, I was like, this is either going to go really good or really
Mhm.
bad. You know, they had the kids had a heavy lift of learning a lot of songs. I'm looking at the set list right now, and they played on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 songs, 12 songs. 3 songs they didn't play on. And that was a heavy lift. And I was talking to my crew guys after rehearsal went long, and it's like, oh boy.
Well, I
And
remember that the day before was, I just know it was supposed to end earlier, and
yeah,
it. So what like when you're hired to do that, you know, how do you, you know, what checklist do you have? Do you do you have to take the, obviously you got the size of the theater. Does that, do you have an idea of what kind of cameras do you want?
Yeah.
How many? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I guess what I'm asking is, all right, you can have dudes with a camera on their shoulder,
Yeah.
but did you use one of those big booms? That
Yeah.
come
We used the
down
jib.
Yeah.
We used the
Um,
jib.
And that was right
and
behind me the whole show.
mm,
So I'm in
Yeah.
every one of those shots.
mm,
He was freelancing, so he was a great jib operator, and I gave him the assignment up front. I said, dude, I'm not going to have the time to call you on your moves, so just constantly freelance. And I said, let's review 4 moves, and these are your 4 moves. You're going to do the whole show. You're going to boom down off the balcony down to the band. You're going to boom up from there. You're going to boom over here. You're going to dolly across or whatever. And then he just went into rotation of that. And I didn't, on the line cut when I was hot switching the show, I didn't really go to him much because
all
I
right.
knew
So talk to what's like hot switching. Go get into that.
hot switching is where I had 18 cameras, believe it or not, on that show. And 6 of them were like mounted GoPro type cameras, like on the drum kit, on the orchestra, on this, and that one was on by Eric, I believe. And they were specifically for coverage. So I always had that shot to go to. Then I had the stationary cameras in the back, and I had a camera assigned to each band member. So Brad had a camera on him at all times. It was Brad's hero cam. Jack had a camera on him at all times. Everybody had one. I knew the songs. I printed out all the lyrics, all who was singing what verse, so I could call what was coming. And I would just look at my sheet, and I'd be okay, we're coming up to this, ready 2, take 2, ready 3, go 3, jib, ready, go jib, jib. And then you call it to the best of your ability through a switcher that has all the inputs. And ultimately, you're going to be late on a lot of stuff.
Sure.
No matter how much you anticipate a shot, you're going to want to go back in post-production and just tweak it a little bit. So what we do is we call ISO. We ISO every camera, and they would get individually recorded. And then we get into post-production and we line all those cameras up. And then I'll go to my editor and say, I really want to see Brad here where he does the pick scrape. Or I really want to see Carrie do this, or on Kelly's vocal with Jack, I want to see them going back and forth. And so we would do that, and it was a labor of love. It was a lot of work, but it was really well worth it. And the process started by talking with the band, talking with Ed primarily, but then it got into working with Steve, their lighting director, quite heavily. And yeah, wonderful guy. And Steve, quite frankly, had never lit for television before, and he was like all in. He was like, yeah, man, let's kick ass, let's do this. And he was just so amazing to work with. And I mean, this could go right on his resume, because he could light for concerts now for CMT or whatever. And Dave, I worked with Dave a lot in audio, and Dave, I love Dave. I got to know Dave really well in Europe, and bonded with him. So that was the pre-production process, mostly involving them. Things went through James sent it through the band. The biggest thing that the band had to approve was my lighting plot plan, and it's to elevate the light level. And I remember James initially said, I don't know if the band's going to like that. They like the spotlights. They like that. And I explained why. And within 2 minutes, James called back and said, I just talked to Brad, Kelly, and Jack. They all said, go with whatever Brian said. So that was the kind of relationship we had formed at that point, and it was really beneficial to smooth sailing. So yeah, it was just fun. And then the challenge was we had to mix 5.1 audio for the DVD. So that's always a challenge, trying to do 5.1, which it worked out great. And then we had closed caption it for broadcast as well. And we didn't know it was going to hit Access TV as quickly as it did. I thought it might in a year or so, but I mean, it hit TV pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's going to actually be on the Saturday again.
Great. The Saturday is going to be the longer show.
Yes,
I think
90 minutes.
Yeah.
Well,
Are the
and if you're watching this, it's already in the past, so don't look this Saturday.
are the Blu-rays and DVDs closed captioned as well?
Yes.
Because we had somebody on the page that kept saying they wanted it to be closed captioned, but I
Oh,
didn't see.
you know what? Maybe they weren't. Maybe the DVDs weren't. That's a good point, because I know it was a rush to get to access, and I think by that time the DVD may have been authored. So
Yeah.
I can't verify that.
Now, was this all shot? Was it shot in 4K? Was it just 1080p?
It was shot. Yeah, we did 1080p. We did shoot some stuff 4K, and the only benefit of that for us is we could punch in the camera and keep the resolution, so I could change a focal length and
Right.
not have it deteriorate and get pixelated. But everything was shot 1080 native, which is still HD.
Yeah.
And
And it looks so much more superior than the DVD, the 720p.
yeah, yeah.
know.
And the the handheld guys brought a lot of good energy, but I told them, like, same thing, don't lock your shot off, don't be boring, cant the angle, swish into the guy, get some active shots in the pit. And we ran into a little bit of a problem in the pit, actually, because the place was so packed that everybody stood for the entire show, that people moved up and really infringed on my handheld camera guys right at the stage, so they couldn't move around real great.
It'd been great if he would have specified there was these three women, in front of Eric, that we know who they are. They made the back of the album cover. They're on the page. Now, what I enjoyed so much about the video is I didn't have any motion sickness from watching it.
Yeah.
Back in the early 2000s, it seemed like anybody who had a video that came out, scene, it was just constant change.
Yeah.
And it was perfect amount of time.
Thank you.
It's fantastic.
It helps being a musician. I mean, I played guitar since I was 14, so I'm really into editing on the beat. And staying in time and 4/4 time, and not switching it to 6/8 time or whatever. And the other thing you brought up, which is a really good point, is that back in that time, shaky cam was a big thing, and shaky cam is nothing but distracting. Movement is good. What I call movement is drift. So your camera drifts, so it feels like you're breathing almost. It's not not shaky. It's just breathing. So when you watch a feature film and you see, you'll notice it now, and the term is called breathing. Have the camera breathe a little bit. It's a very effective technique.
Yeah, it looks great.
Did you, like, prepping for this show? Did they give you any video, or did you go to YouTube and kind of like, map out? All right, this is kind of what they do. And is that maybe a reason why they didn't do any like deep cuts or anything like that? Because, you've got to basically plot camera work, around something, and they need something established.
It wasn't as much that. I think one of the things why they didn't go too far into deep cuts is people go to the shows to hear the hits. And us big time Night Ranger fans want to hear those oddities and those deep cuts and those things that we don't hear all the time, and they'll break them out. So I don't know if I answered your question, because I'm already derailing and going somewhere else. I'm going linear on you, and that is I went to Vegas to see him and just to hang out last year. They played, I think it was Golden Nugget or Harrah's, and they ripped into cover tunes at the end of the night that I was never expecting. They did Back in Black. They did a bunch of like stuff and Jack killed it. They killed it. I was just like, my mind was blown. It was just like, it was so much fun.
Yeah, I love when they rip into Boys of Summer every now and then.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds so good.
It does. And I saw a clip of them at NAMM where they played acoustic. They had an acoustic set, and I just saw a band called Need to Breathe in Philly, and they broke their set down, and they kicked ass. They were great. And they broke it down and did an acoustic set mid show, and it was brilliant. And I think Night Ranger could do that as well.
Yeah. Probably the coolest acoustic set I ever saw. I saw Stone Temple Pilots back in the 90s. And, they do their rock set, and then for their acoustic set from their lighting rig would come down to the stage, and on top of their lighting rig they had like a living room. So it was like, a coffee table and
That's
couches
brilliant.
and stuff, and they would go there, sit, do a few acoustic shows, then the lighting rig would go back up.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
I love STP. They're San Diego guys.
yeah.
Yeah. I love them. They're great. And then the singer that took over for Scott, he does a good job.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I bought, when they had Chester Bennington, I bought that record, and I don't think I bought the latest, but those first three, even four, the first four Stone Temple Pilot records are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, the second one, that's, Purple, that's top shelf. Even Tiny Music from Vatican Gift Shop, I mean, that's fucking killer as well. Number 4, the fourth record, I mean, that's a heavy record. And I obviously haven't even, mentioned the first record, but those first 4 records, man, they were in my rotation.
Yeah.
And I kind of date MTV. Like, people think MTV stopped playing music or videos like in the 80s, early 90s, but I still remember 1996, I guess it was 97, 96, Big Bang Baby. I remember keeping MTV on just for that video to show up. So they were still playing videos in 1996. This orchestra show, was there something different? Was there something that you ran into that you weren't expecting? Any like issues? You still get stuff like that where, well, shit, I didn't think of that.
The only issue I ran into for that show, and it wasn't a big deal, but I felt disappointed, was my technical director on the job was supposed to record the multi-view, which I have a huge monitor up in front of me, which is like a 55, 60-inch monitor, and it has every camera on it. And so it's all assets, everything in one fell swoop. And he was supposed to give me a feed of that on an ISO on a record deck, so that I could reference it when we were going back into post-production and tweaking some shots. And I didn't have it. And what am I going to,
that's what I was wondering if you used to punch stuff in, like, okay, do this.
Yeah, it's exactly what would have been so beneficial. And it was one of my asks and on my list of deliverables from them. And I didn't get it. And I remember as soon as the show was over, I went over, I got all the hard drives and everything to fly back to Philly with. And I said, "You got the multi-view on this, right?" And he was like, I forgot to record that. And what are you going to do at that point? The guy,
too late. You can't fire me. Too late.
Yeah. But it was I wouldn't change anything about that show. I was that pleased with it.
Well, I remember Ed. I was with Ed probably January, so this was like 2 months after the show. We were at the hotel, and he showed me like the first rough cut of it.
Yeah.
And I said on the podcast, that next week or whatever, that even then I could tell this is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, I'm seeing a rough cut, and then maybe a couple months later, you guys had the interviews at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was just like, listen, this is, because really the only big DVD we have was the one that was released a few years ago, 35 Years in a Night. It was released in Chicago.
I did reference that when the band awarded me this job, and I pointed out to them, and I wasn't throwing anybody under the bus, but I pointed out to them things that were done incorrectly about the production on that job. And
honestly, I ain't going to say, and I'm not a fan of it. All right.
Yeah.
So
that show went out over the internet that night too.
Was it live?
It was live on the internet. You had to watch it through some companies. I don't know who was sponsoring it that did it.
The lighting was really uneven. The camera coverage wasn't great.
But that's what I was, when I was seeing these, rough copies, I was like, this is going to be the copy that you want.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the one we have in the past.
Yeah.
This is the one you're going to want. It's superior, audio wise, but definitely picture wise. It's like you're there.
Yeah, thank you. I remember having a text chain with Jack, Kelly, and Brad, and it was great because they were really psyched about how good it looked. I remember driving home in the van with those guys. I was in the front seat, and they were right behind me, and I recorded on my phone just a part of the show, and I was playing it back for them. And they were like, "This is fucking great," and that was just the line cut that even that happened literally 30 minutes earlier.
Well, two things I specifically love about it is, one, it doesn't look like it's on film. It looks like it's in your living room.
Yeah.
I love, like, like you'd watch a football game. It's live looking.
Yeah.
And two, you used actual crowd shots from that show.
Yeah.
I can't tell. I was at a KISS show in Dayton, Ohio, and they were recording the crowd show shots for their pay-per-view that was taped in New Jersey.
Mm.
I have friends on, the New Jersey show that are in Dayton, Ohio,
That's one other regret that I do have. And that was, I was a little underwhelmed by one of my camera guys' coverage in the crowd. And I gave them specific tasks to shoot. And a lot of it was during the verses, shoot over the shoulders of people, like you pointed out earlier. And then during the choruses, flip the camera around and get the sing along. But don't be in their face. And he came back with all these like really close-up shots. And they were not
explains Rob and Lisa.
They were not they were not tethered. So I couldn't see what they were doing because they were floating around in the crowd. They couldn't have a cable to them. So I had no idea what they got until I got back into the studio and popped their cards in. I was looking at it.
So after everything's recorded, you get all the equipment. Just really kind of explain, you did some, but explain the process of, from, you collecting everything, getting back to the office to where you're ready to, send this to Frontiers or whoever.
Yeah. Yeah. So we went through numerous, rough cuts. Nothing changed dramatically about anything. The bones is what you see in the DVD release and the Access TV show. That is the bones of the show, and that was always there. We just tweaked some things to tighten things up. There were a couple interstitials where Jack would tell a story between songs, and it was a great story, but it just kind of sucked the energy out of the flow of one song into the other. So we just kind of like consolidated and had to trim some of those stories up. We had one situation where he was talking about, God, what song? I'm looking at the set list right now. It was Goodbye. He was telling a story about Goodbye, about his brother dying from an overdose, and somebody in the crowd yelled something out right as he was telling the story, and it could not have been the most inappropriate time to say anything, and we had to trim around that because it was just an uncomfortable section.
There's no way to dub that out at all.
No, you know what, there wasn't. We did have split track. It was recorded on Pro Tools, and so we were able to isolate and take some things out, but we couldn't get that out, and that was unfortunate. I go to a lot of shows. I live by music. I love music. I go to at least 6 shows a month, concerts at least, and I'm so tired of the people that feel like they have to be part of the show by yelling things out. I just saw Rob Thomas was here in Philly doing a benefit show, a really quaint benefit show for a foundation he has. It was really like an exclusive ticket to get. And people just were yelling, "I love you." They kept going. And he finally flagged them and said, "Guys, this is my show. It's not your show. Let me do my show." And everybody behaved at that point. And I give him a lot of credit for, doing that.
Yeah, like I think we were talking earlier, is my biggest thing now is you go to a show and like I get you want to talk to who, and I don't mind if you talk for 30 seconds about something, but when it's 2 minutes, I come close to getting in fights,
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
shows just because I will tell them shut the fuck up.
It happened at the Ryman for me. After we were down there for Night Ranger, I flew back down there to see Mellencamp for 2 nights, and which was
had to be
epic.
great.
Oh my God, it was. I was front row. It was freaking killer seeing Mellencamp at the Ryman. But the second show, the second night, there was 2 ladies behind me, 2 girls that couldn't give a rat's ass about the show, and all they were doing was yapping. And I literally, after song 2, turned my back to them and said, "Are you going to watch the show and enjoy it, or talk? Because if you want to talk, go out to the lobby." And she was like, "Sorry," they didn't say another word.
Yeah, it's I don't know. And it's always to me, it's always the people who, are probably always bitching about today's youth, being whatever. And it's like, you know what? You're the fucking problem. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
So
and you know what their cousins are at the show? When you're on the aisle seat,
Yeah.
and every other song they're going out to get a beer or to take a piss.
Yeah.
And I'll close it. I'm like, the Cumberland Gap goes that way. It doesn't come this way anymore.
Listen, you're on an aisle seat, buddy.
It don't matter.
Bitching about sitting on the aisle seat.
Bring back 4 beers. Don't come back with 1 and then go
listen,
back.
If I bring back 4 beers, I'm just pissing quicker again.
But you're gonna go the other way. It's like when we were in Kentucky. When we were in Kentucky recently, it was set up in a big ballroom, and you could just move the chairs. Yeah. And these guys we were front row, and they kept moving the chair, moving my wife to the side. And she's like, "I'm getting tired of this." I'm like, "Tired of what?" They keep moving me. I went, that ended.
Yeah.
I have zero tolerance for that. I can't help it.
Concerts are a kind of a communal event that brings people together. It's the only place music is so unique that way.
Yes.
And everybody should be in good behavior good behavior, because it's uplifting. And when you run into assholes, they ruin everything for everybody. And quite frankly, they're not going to remember the show.
You know what? Not all of them are drinking either. It's not like it's booze. Most of the time, it's not booze. I mean, they may have a drink, but they're not. Like, I would almost give them a little bit of a pass if they're just intoxicated and don't realize it, right? And they're just, it's fucking rocks. But it's what did Bob say when Diane told him that? Like, motherfuckers.
Josh, you ever been to the basement in Columbus? It's literally a basement.
I don't think it's there anymore, but yes.
Well, guy named Butch Walker. Brian, you ever heard of this guy at all?
No.
Yeah. If you ever get the chance to see him, it's even if you don't know any of the songs, it's one of the most incredible, polarizing experiences with an artist on the stage.
Great.
So my wife finally agrees to go see him because she's, digging the music she's listened to. We weren't there 5 minutes, and this girl spilled a beer all down her. Ruined the whole night. Yeah. That's all I kept hearing. When are we going to go? I'm like, when the show's over. Well, you don't have beer all over you.
Yeah, but I kind of expect that at the basement.
But it was a basement.
So when you get this finalized, what feedback did you get from the guys when they saw the finished project? Were you? I doubt you were with them, but I'm sure you got something on the text chain.
Yeah, no, it was all great. It was all great. They all had good comments, and they all had specific things that they saw that they wanted tweaked a little bit, which we accommodated, and they were the good calls. They were correct calls. So I saw the guys they performed in Philly this past summer with Poison, with Brett and stuff. So I was able to hang out with them. I actually took Brad in my vet to the show, and we escorted the buses. It was pretty funny. And they were all very grateful and appreciative, and it was just another great event in my humble opinion, of my saturation within the band, because I respect everyone in that organization, everybody, the roadies, the guys, the techs, Steve and Dave, I think are brilliant at what they do and are hardworking and are so vested in Night Ranger's success. Ed is just a killer tour manager. He has everything buttoned down, and the guys in the band are just great. So I can't say enough. I feel, I've had a great career. I've had a really great career, and I've won around here. I've won literally probably 80 awards. Working with Night Ranger is one of the best things I've ever done.
Outside of this podcast.
Outside this podcast.
Okay.
Well, this is part of that, maybe, because we're talking about Night Ranger.
Well, and how easy was your job when they only had to stop the show one time to redo one thing?
Actually, we did two things, actually.
I only remember the one when they were during Night Ranger. They went back up on the top, and
I
don't remember them.
Yeah, I won't mention the guitar player, but what guitar player was playing the wrong riff there.
Oh.
And then we did the second take, and he did the same thing again.
How closely did you work with Anthony Fox on that?
What was that about, Anthony?
Now, Anthony Fox, I know he did some work. I mean, I don't know if it was more like on the audio release, but did you guys, work together with that?
We worked very closely together. Anthony's great. I had dinner with him when we were in Nashville.
And for those that don't know, Anthony Fox is mastered, and I don't know if he really produced, but I know he mastered probably the last 4 studio records by Night Ranger. But anyways, that's who.
Yeah, and he's got a great client list. He's got a great pedigree, and he's a very interesting cat and really into it, and loves talking shop. And I remember I think I was in Turks and Caicos, and I kept getting phone calls from Anthony like every 5 minutes about the show. And I'm like, dude, I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
He'd hang up, and then the next day he'd call again, but great guy. He was very involved in the final mix of it, and nothing really changed, but mix levels from live show to final performance. A guitar might want to get bumped up 3 decibels or whatever, or panned a little bit. And then, so he was very instrumental in doing not only the mix for the DVD, but also for the CD and the audio release. Yeah, good guy.
Brent, you got anything you want to ask him before we close this out?
Yeah, actually, 2 things. What other music videos have you done?
I've worked with the Goo Goo Dolls.
So, yeah.
They were fun. They're good guys. Good video, good project.
Out of Buffalo, aren't they?
Yep.
Are they Rochester? They are Buffalo.
Are they? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
And is there any commercial that you had nationwide that we're going to remember? Like,
yes,
not Where's the Beef caliber, maybe, but
I did one of those.
Yeah,
I did one of those, and here's one that's going to resonate with you.
Okay.
I actually did one of the I've fallen and I can't get up commercials.
Really?
Yes. I was about 23 years old, 25 years old. We shot it literally 15 minutes from my house here.
That became pop culture.
It did. I was at a comedy show and they were making fun of it, and I was like, I fucking directed that.
but in a good way,
Yeah.
In a good way, I'm sure, because everybody knows that. That's fantastic.
Well, it's the same thing with the Time Life infomercials. Everybody knows them. And
now, do you still do those?
That business is being exited out right now, so we're not going to be producing anymore. And that's
because I would
probably
watch
public knowledge right now, but you'll see a couple reruns of some of those, but we're not producing anymore currently because of the.
You do the one Tony Orlando?
I did.
I fucking love that one.
I remember that. Yeah, I know that one.
Dude, I would watch those. Like, my girlfriend at the time, like, you just saw this. I'm like, oh, it's kind of like different all the time. But you could, I didn't matter if it was like soft rock or the hard rock. Like I said, remember America, Tony Orlando, did John Schneider do one? But then it was always weird because it was like a celebrity, and then someone who you don't fucking is a
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Um,
Davy Jones Monkeys, I think, did
It's-
one.
I did one with Mickey Dolenz in Nashville.
Oh, Mickey, maybe that's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
But-
Mickey was great, but Mickey was the same thing. We hired a musician, Mickey, but we needed kind of a spokesperson, female, to play off of him
Yep.
and keep it going in case Mickey wasn't so good. Mickey was great, and Mickey, it turns out is a very accomplished director. So it was funny directing a director. It was the same thing when I worked with George Clooney. It's like I'm directing this guy to do a voiceover, but he's directed freaking feature films. How do you
Did you do the one where they were in? I think it's like the place is called Legends in Nashville.
No, I did not. No, the only one I did in Nashville was with Mickey Dolenz.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like that one anyways. Then.
So long story short, that client, it was a very good business for us because we got points on it. So the more CDs it sold, the more revenue I got on the back end of it. So it really made you vested into doing. There's a very formulaic approach to doing those and having people pick up a phone. And
well, it's always that extra disc, you get 124 tracks, and then also we'll send you, the 12 ultimate love themes. I'm like, well,
that reminds me of when of course, you've seen the Spinal Tap version of that, haven't you?
No.
It's on the DVD, but at the end of the VHS, when you'd rent it, they'd had Blackie Lawless from Wasp, and they did their own infomercial basically in 1982 about Spinal Tap's greatest hits, and they got this guy looking all heavy metal, sitting in front of a fireplace, drinking wine, laying down. It's hysterical.
I was watching SNL a couple years ago, and they did a skit on it, and once again, it was flattery. Just to be,
I love those Time Life ones, man. Just like I said, I remember watching Tony Orlando one, and they were all good, man. They were all good. So, and if you ever do them again, call me because I want to sit in on one.
Yeah,
but I want to bring my own couch and PJs, right? And just,
and I've got boxes of Betamax tapes of nothing but MTV videos from the 80s if you need them.
Okay. I remember.
Whatever def that is. What is it? 420?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably 420. That's probably about right. Ratio.
I recorded most of stuff on SP because I knew it gave me better quality than EP. So
I remember those days. Yeah.
Well, Brian, here is the DVD from Japan.
Right on.
Thank you for doing such a great job on this. There's nothing worse than getting something and being disappointed. And kind of like we were, and technology didn't change that much from 2017 to 2022. But you did a great job. Everybody is happy with it. Everybody's posting their pictures of their Blu-rays and pictures of them watching it on the TV on our page, and
and you're putting us on TV at the same time.
Yeah, we had
did you ever get into those calls? There's too much Josh in the front row filming. Can you?
But we have a couple other co-hosts with us, and you got all three of them.
Yeah.
In there, Lisa's rocking, Robin's singing along, and then you got a shot of Andy as well. But
speaking of that shot of Andy, and I'm sorry, I'll shut up after this. I was showing my daughter. She's like, "Where are you on this Blu-ray?" I'm like, "There's a couple side views," and I was glad. I just had facial surgery, so my face was all swollen. So you caught me from this side mostly as the camera panned, and I said, "I know exactly where Andy is." So I go to show her, and there's Andy, and she goes, "Well, there's you." I'm like, "Where?" I'm in literally the next camera view I'm right in the center of the screen. I had no clue. I didn't even see myself. It
was a fun night.
Yeah, it was a great night. Captured it well.
One more crazy question. You got your cell phone next to you?
I do.
Who's the most famous person you could touch and call? You don't have to do it right now, but who do you think you could pick up? Mine I don't know who we got. We got Brad Gillis, Jack. Probably Eric Levy would be the most.
Well, I'm just grabbed the first thing I found.
George
George
Benson.
Benson. Wow.
Hey. Levy would like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Eric is freaking brilliant.
You were supposed to say he was the most asshole to record that night, you know.
I love Eric. He's just so laid back. The
is.
very first time do you guys remember Mike Peters? Remember the Alarm?
Yeah.
What a great guy.
Is that the guy was that the lead singer?
Yeah.
Big hair and
Yeah.
what's that? So come on down and meet your maker.
Yes.
The stand.
Yes. He's recovering from his third bout of leukemia.
Is he?
Saw him up in New York, and but boy, he just keeps going.
Well, didn't he? He was touring right before the pandemic, wasn't he?
Yep. I actually played. I played 3 gigs with them. He brought me up on stage. I played in San Diego, I played in Philadelphia, and I played in a place called Solderton, Pennsylvania, where on their last song or the first song of their encores, we got a special guy coming up.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, dude, it was like incredible.
See, I play drums, and I'm never going to get that call from Night Ranger. Kelly Kagi could be on a respirator. They're like, no, you know, ain't going to happen.
Do you play anything, Josh?
I used to play bass back in the day. I still need to sell my shit. I mean, I think I could cover for Brad. I would just hit the shit out of the whammy bar. I could cover a little bit.
But he could do it like this with his elbow and it make it sound good.
Dude, well, mine would be more like Flair. Like I would put it on the ground, lay the guitar on the ground. I'd do like a flying elbow from the drum riser. Right? Yeah. Like I'd really test out that Floyd Rose.
It still wouldn't sound as good as he could do.
Listen.
Dude, when we were in Zurich, I told you when we were in Nashville, we were guitar shopping. When we were in Zurich, Switzerland on tour doing the festivals, Brad and I went to another music store. We had to walk like 5 miles to this place. And he got in there and they had great vintage stuff. I mean, it was amazing in Zurich of all places. And once again, he picked up this Koa Taylor. I remember it vividly. It's like an 800 series Koa Taylor. And you play acoustic guitar, you're used to this. And he just went just crazy.
It's sickening how good he is.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like you'll be at sound check and you'll just see him just doing stuff. It's like if I had an ounce of that.
Yeah.
And that's breathing to him. That's really what that is. That's just breathing.
Well, I say that's why like him and Jeff were so good. They were so, have so many great licks is because they were so good.
Yeah.
It's like whenever they would sit down and do a solo, like I got to make this hard as fuck, and, to be, to compete with Jeff, and then Jeff's like, I got to make this hard as fuck to compete with Brad.
Well, it's funny. Brad told me a story about when Kerry joined the band and that he was replicating just something that Jeff did, and Jeff was doing some tapping techniques, and Kerry didn't do it. He wasn't a tapper at that point. So Brad suggested to Kerry, said, hey, maybe at some point you could try doing some tapping in there. He said the next show he had it down. He was, he was amazed at how quickly he just went right to it.
Yep.
Yeah, he compliments Brad well.
They do. They
compliment each other. Actually, that's how I should say it.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that.
All right. Well, don't when this is released, don't hit me up too bad on my editing. All right. Like
I
thought you were gonna have a special guest editor on this. Is my lighting okay?
This isn't City Center, Filmworks. It's just a real simple intro, real simple outro. Hopefully you come around the Night Ranger camp more when I'm there so I can get blackmail on you. So that way you'll know when I have enough blackmail on Brian when we have this whole grand opening to our podcast, and you see George Clooney on there narrating the Ultimate Night Ranger podcast.
You'll have Brian. You'll catch Brian telling that old Bono joke. That Bono joke where he says in concert, every time I clap my hands, a child dies. And you hear the guy in the audience yells, then stop fucking clapping your hands.
Brent? But I always say you'll know when I've got enough blackmail
Yeah.
on Jack and Brad is when they're playing like, hey guys, we're going to take a break from playing all the hits and we're going to play every song from our 1988 record. I was like, you will know that I've finally got enough on them to get what I want. But again, Brian, thank you for joining us, and
Hey,
I
thank you.
appreciate. Hey, hold that Emmy up. Get a good look at it.
Yeah.
I don't know where mine's at, so I don't have.
And
one
what are
to
the
show.
others behind you as well? I'm sorry. I wanted.
These are Telly Awards.
Okay.
This was for a corporate video for a pharmaceutical company named Senecor. This I have 3 of them around here for Night Ranger. We actually won one for the concert video.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We did.
Yeah,
And
did Radley just show us?
Oh,
one?
did.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I do know. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Now you do know that you are the second person in the Night Ranger camp that has an Emmy. Angela has one as well. So
I love Angela.
so now she may not have 3, so you may have seniority.
Yeah. She we talk video business when we get together because I know that she's into that as well. And actually I hooked her up with some friends in Phoenix, Scottsdale.
If you
some
ever
work when
gonna
she's
do
not on the road, she can work with them.
you're ever going to be doing a movie at all and you want an assured Academy Award, you got Josh and I right here. We can do the pretend podcasting.
Well,
love
I
it.
mean,
Dude, we'll hook you. We'll make it happen.
yeah. I don't see we are definitely better suited for radio.
Oh,
But
Well, I want to thank you because I had a shitty day today. I had surgery. I was under anesthesia 8 hours ago, 9 hours ago, and you guys gave me some energy tonight. So thank you.
good.
well,
Most people have no idea what they're in for, and they kind of dread it coming in, and then they turn around and they're always laughing when they leave. So that's
well,
great.
listen, I mean, I wasn't too worried about it because me and Brent are usually heavily medicated every day, so you'll fit just right in. Now, if next time I'm in Philadelphia, I expect you to take me to a Flyers game in Elfress Alley.
You got it.
When was the last time you was at Elfress Alley? It's been a while. See,
40 years ago.
And you also got what, the 2 different cheesesteaks? There's 2 different.
There's Pat's and there's Gino's.
Gino's,
Yeah,
but,
Pat's and.
but locals probably stay away from those. But
I'm trying to remember because a buddy of mine worked for a guy named John DeBella. Is that his name?
Yeah,
The radio guy.
WMR.
He was his producer for a while. And
So,
he would talk about
was that Mark the Shark? Or was
no,
that...
his name was Rob.
Okay.
I don't know what he went by.
Mark the Shark was Columbus, Ohio. I mean, I know of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cheese Whiz, Philly's cheesesteaks. Are you a
Whiz or
guy?
without? I'm not a cheese whiz guy. I go with American.
All right.
But I'm from San Diego, so what can I say?
Yeah. I guess that's true. But all right. Well, thank you for joining us. Sorry your Phillies didn't make it all the way, but I was rooting for them.
Thank you.
And now, are you Phillies or Padres?
Both.
All right. Well, you had at the end, I guess, a disappointing season on both ends. Padres should have been a hell of a lot better, and the Phillies should have went to the World Series.
Yeah.
So, but
Phillies choked. Phillies choked.
Well, I just want the Phillies to go back to the old uniform. I've been trying to find my other 2 favorite teams outside of the Reds are the Astros. So I was dying to see an Astros Phillies World Series, and I want that classic P hat with the baseball inside.
Yeah,
that's iconic.
Well, you never know what might show up at your door.
Yeah, there you go. The great thing about Philadelphia too is if you got time before the baseball game, you can walk right over to this building and there's no horses there, but you can bet on every horse race in the world.
Yeah.
And drink some beer and meet some of the best, finest locals of Philadelphia. But thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
And really, honestly, thank you for this.
Thank you.
Not very many bands, it's almost the perfect storm. Night Ranger is at the top of their game, 40 years in. It was a great night, even without the recording stuff with, the Danny Repepe Memorial Show, the orchestra, I mean, we didn't even have to have this for it to be a great night.
And those kids were fantastic.
Yeah.
But with, even with all of that, you get this, and it's
Perfect souvenir.
This was as great as you could have wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's like nothing in life works out that perfect. Right.
Yeah.
I guess this is the one time. So,
It's a line.
everything lined up, and you were a part of that, and we appreciate it. So, Brian, you are now a friend of the podcast, and hopefully here soon we have you on again for whatever the next project may be. Hopefully it's a new Night Ranger album or a Jack Blade solo album or
a Bengals Eagles Super Bowl.
It could be. Or maybe he's still a Chargers fan. Maybe, I don't know. But as long as the Bengals are there, we don't care. But hey, man, thank you for joining us. Right. And definitely we hope to see you again.
Thank you, guys. Good talking to you. Good seeing you both.
Thank you, sir.